the window had been busted out and part of our gear had been stolen.
There's nowhere to play up here at all.
I'm sitting there kind of by myself, like waiting for my memories, and the mirrors, like the mirrors kind of like spin open like 90 degrees, like they kind of rotate open, and all these women in sexy lingerie can come walking out from behind the mirrors.
I'm just going to throw this out there that it almost sounded like you were kind of the dark side sometimes of the scene.
Just when I'd parted ways with Monuments, and so it was really, really desperate time of my life.
At the end of it, our bass player told us, like, he just looked at us like, yeah, this is my last show.
So, like, basically back to the beast era.
Dealing with this alcohol intake, and we're at a Christian festival, and we're supposed to be a Christian band. I was kind of like, man, this sucks. This is not a good look.
Welcome back to Dark Side of the Scene. I'm your host, Brandon. Normally, I'd be saying alongside my co-host, Ed, but Ed cannot be with us here tonight. He's unavailable. So I'm going to be flying solo for this one. Basically, kind of caught me off guard a little bit, but it is what it is. Typically, Ed and I will banter back and forth, but with him not being here, I have no one to banter with. I don't really have any complaints either. No gripes for the night. So with all that being said, this will be a different type of episode, I guess. But anyways, if you would like to be on an episode of Dark Side of the Scene, send an email to Brandon at darksideofscene.com and we'll get scheduled on a future episode. We've gotten plenty of episodes turned out already, so this is just keeping it going. Definitely appreciate everyone that's been out there supporting us, following us, listening to the episodes. You guys are definitely kicking some ass out there for us. But for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and bring the guest on in, so hang tight and we'll get this thing started. I'd like to take the time to welcome my guest tonight, Jimmy. Jimmy, thanks for coming out and talking to me.
Thanks for having me here, Brendan. Looking forward to jumping in and talking about some cool stuff.
Yeah. Again, usually my co-host is here, but he's kind of wrapped up in a project at the moment and wasn't able to get here in time. And it's not that I can't do it on my own. So no sense for him to trying to rush through something.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Listen, life gets in the way of a lot of things. So I think anything that has to do with like music or promoting music or anything that's along the artistic avenue, we always have to make some sort of concession here and there when it comes to the things that we're passionate about, right? So,
yep, totally. Well, I guess we'll get the general questions out of the way. So where are you from?
So I'm from Montreal, born and raised. It's been quite a while that I was in bands, like in and out of the music scene, and then I took a long break actually for like almost a decade. And I was in a band called Sinistry before, like I'd been on a hiatus, and then towards the end of 2019, we decided to kind of like revive Sinistry as a bit of like a studio project almost, because we had some songs that we were kind of sitting on. We had posted them like partly on Bandcamp, but not really anywhere else. And then we revived that project, and that kind of got me interested in doing the whole like self-producing thing and learning about the software and like just music production in general. And like being a vocalist, I feel like it kind of like I already had like two strikes against me, because I wasn't like like playing an instrument, so to speak, right? Like I wasn't playing the guitar, playing the bass, playing the drums. Even though I had like some background and I've written songs in like Sinistry, like it was not the easiest like transition, I guess you could say, right off the bat. But then, yeah, I kind of just started grinding and learning everything on my own while we were working with with a couple of different people. Like we worked with JF Dagenet from Cataclysm. We worked with Chris Donaldson from Cryptopsy and Kevin Jardine from Slaves on Dope, and that's how like that batch of like Sinistry songs came about. But after a while, like the other guys were kind of like not feeling it as much, so it's more a studio project than anything. Like we weren't touring from 2020 onwards, obviously. Um, so we just kind of decided, okay, listen, it's going to be a studio project. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to teach myself everything from the ground up, or keep teaching myself everything from the ground up as I've been doing. And I decided to found Through Mists, which is my solo project. And slowly but surely, I was piecing everything together, and I gave myself a goal to release at least one track every month for like at least like a year and a half. Like I said to myself, once I start releasing music, until like I start becoming like burdened by it, I don't want to I'm just gonna release something every month. So like it started with one song, then it got to like a couple of EPs, now it's a couple of albums, and it's just like, when you get the ball rolling, like things can pick up steam pretty quick, right? So
You find that it's easier to work by yourself than trying to collaborate with others?
yes and no. Like the good thing about working by myself is I just have myself to argue with, right? So that's one thing. Like I have like my own ego, and I just got to deal with that. But like if you have three, four, five people that you're working with, like I mean, you have to kind of take everyone's ideas into consideration. You have to take everyone's like egos and feelings into consideration. It's a different dynamic, and the one thing that's difficult, I guess, about being solo is that you don't have anyone to bounce ideas off of, right? So there's that.
Yeah.
That's like a big negative, but at the same time, like I'm very decisive, so I know if I like something, like I like it. If I don't like it, then I kind of just flush it. And like maybe it was a good idea that could have been refined with someone else, but I mean, listen, you're always having to come up with good ideas, whether you're with other people or running solo. So
Yeah.
I kind of miss like doing stuff with other people too. Which I mean, I wouldn't close off that. It's fun to have friends and do stuff with them musically. So that's probably going to be in the works down the road somewhere. But for Through Mists, I think I'm going to be one manning it for the foreseeable future, I guess.
You wouldn't want to make it into like your own, like have all the music put in place, and then you bring someone else involvement to like play it live, or you just keep it all solo?
I don't know, man. Like to play live, like I'm thinking about it, and if I were to play this music live, I wouldn't want to play guitar. I wouldn't want to play bass. I would just want to sing. And like there's like a lot of aspects like to the music, because there's like pianos and synths and stuff like that. And I'm the type of guy who values like efficiency and like ease of use. So like if I were to play it live, I guess like there'd be a lot of learning curve for whoever is going to pick up
Yeah.
the guitar, right? Because there's a lot of material too, so like they'd have to like sift through what they want to play, what they can play, because like I don't know, it's a lot. I would do it, I guess, but it's not in my viewpoint right now. But I would play live if given the opportunity, and I could get a couple of dedicated players that wouldn't mind like holding up the instrument side of it, and I would just do the vocals. I would be down.
One of the guys we interviewed, I think it was on our first episode, um, he wrote a lot of the stuff for the band that he has now originally.
Hmm.
And he basically hired studio musicians to like record with him and then play with him. But now it's become like its own entity where they're now writing music as a group together, but originally started out as his own solo stuff. And we've talked to a couple other people that are kind of doing the same thing. They collaborate with people from other countries, and yet they've managed to release stuff, and my co-host and I seem to struggle sometimes with, like, currently I don't have a band, but he
Mhm.
does, and getting together for practices, shows, and everything. Just trying to find people in your own like area is hard enough. And we've been talking to a lot of people that somehow are able to collaborate with people all across the planet, and they don't seem to have these issues like we do, trying to actually deal with people in person.
It's tough, man. Like dealing with people in person, it's when you're like close by, you kind of take for granted how easy and how difficult it is at the same time, right? Like if not everyone has the same drive or motivation for it, then it gets tough to like coordinate, right? So like if you have 4 or 5 people and you need to like juggle the scheduling, like just to get to a band practice, let alone like stringing shows together, or if you go away for like a week or two to do a tour or whatever, like that's tough.
Yeah.
So I get you, man. I get you. Like when I was younger, and we were touring a lot, like the 4 of us had like this goal of just going out there and grinding, and we put miles on our band. Now it's my life is different now. It's I have like different aspirations for myself. More it's, I guess it's a bit more selfish in the sense that I'm kind of just doing it for myself rather than to like quote unquote make it or make an impact in the scene type of thing, or like I want my contribution, like what other people get out of it is some sort of enjoyment, but at the same time like to go out and like be on the road. I don't know, like the logistics of it just seems like so daunting to me. Even like to play a show here in Montreal, which is like probably the easiest thing. It's like finding the people, getting on the same page, this and that. Whereas like if you're collaborating online and internationally, it's like, okay, well, there might have like a 7 hour time difference or a 10 hour time difference with this person, but it doesn't really matter because they're going to go record their parts. They're going to send it to you or to someone else, and they're going to mix it and master it or whatever the case is, and you don't have to think about it as much.
Yeah.
So yeah, like there's that, right? Like if you're signing on to something, then like especially like overseas or like long distance, then it's easy to get bashed, right? Like if someone like doesn't live up to their potential or like live up to their word, and then social media could be a very powerful thing to like out someone for being lazy, lazy, I guess. But
That's kind of what this podcast kind of gets turned into, which was not, it is and it's not. Like, when we first started this, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, we're going to just cause a bunch of needless drama. We're going to destroy the scene, this and that." And that's not really what we're about. We're not out here trying to bash people, but at the same time, every scene has a lot of gatekeepers, and they have a lot of flaky musicians that everyone ends up encountering. There's the same guy that's been in how many different bands, and you got to think about it for a second. Why has he got so many bands he's been in?
mm-hmm.
Like, is he not a stable person to jam with? Is he got like issues? Like, why is he always looking for projects? Like, you always find that in
Yeah.
almost every genre of music as well. It's not just strictly the heavier stuff that has been mostly what we've interviewed, is because Ed and I come from metal bands ourselves. But as we've been across the board, excuse me, it's basically almost everyone has encountered something similar when it comes to dealing with other people. And my only thing is like, it has to be something to do with the average musician is either A, has a little bit of flakiness to themselves,
Mm-hmm.
or B, they're very high strung and it's their way or the highway. And it's like, there's other things, but some of these people are just so hard to work with. So it's almost gotten to the point where everyone does kind of do what you're doing, where they prefer just to write their own stuff because you don't have to deal with the bullshit of somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, man. Like the flakiness, I think every musician has a little bit of the flakiness, right? Like otherwise they wouldn't be like creative, right? Like if you don't have like some sort of creativity or like a wandering mind type of thing, then like it's hard to like stay fresh and stay creative. But like, yeah, there's levels of flakiness. Like you don't want to say like, okay, we're gonna jam at 7, like from 7 to like 9 or whatever, and then like the guy shows up at like 9:30, like drunk off his ass and God knows what else, you know.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of that, and yeah, I mean, I see people like jumping from band to band, but sometimes it's just like the combination of people doesn't work, and you know when they what sometimes when people do find the right like member mix, sometimes it's good, sometimes sometimes they'll never find it. But yeah, there's a lot of people that flake. So I experienced that a lot. Like in my teens, I was seeing people going from band to band, like, oh yeah, we found a bassist. Oh, by the way, he's in like 10 other bands because of whatever, you know.
The joke,
Yeah.
the joke around here, not so much as a joke, but we actually mention it quite a bit. There seems to be a lack of bass players and drummers in the world. So Ed always encourages everyone to have their kids learn to play bass and drums because those are the two positions that seem to always be
Open.
yeah. But surprisingly, a lot of the people we've interviewed so far have been bass players, which is strange because we talk about how no one ever has a bass player. They're always looking for a bass player, but we've interviewed quite a few bass players, so it's got me thinking that maybe it's something to do with the fact that the stigma these days is bass players are unimportant, so they feel like they have to get on podcasts to talk about themselves because it's their only time to shine because they're always hidden behind the guitar players and the vocalists, and then the drummers are like the last member of the band, so they're wanting to get their 5 seconds of fame.
It's the renaissance and revolution of the bass player, I guess.
No, we've interviewed quite a few bass players and actually a couple of drummers as well. I was like, well, we keep talking about how it's hard to find them. We get guitar players or vocalists all the time, but you never find a bass player, never find a drummer. But we've talked to quite a few so far. I was like, maybe they're not that hard to find. It's just finding the right one. But even around here, kind of like you said, there's typically, if there's a drummer, they're usually in a couple projects. Same thing with a good bass player. Like all the good musicians seem to be in several projects.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, the singer from Soilwork has been on like so many albums, like just in the past year or two. Like I've seen his like album credits, and it's like, God, how many bands is this guy in? But he's a machine, right? Like he knocks it out of the park every single time.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's that, right? But man, like it takes a while to really like gel. And it's funny though, because about bassists and drummers, you can never find like the right fit, right? But I feel like a bassist and a drummer need to gel better or like have more of a natural chemistry than, let's say, if you have two guitarists in a band. Because like from my experience, if you have a two guitar band, if they're just pushing each other to be better guitarists in general, rather than like, let's say, competing with each other or trying to like outdo one another or whatever the case is, or like, oh, you're the rhythm player, I'm the lead player, and like being super like in the box about like their quote unquote position in the band. Like that, I think the bass and drum relationship is way more important, just because of like how much like grooviness or like the rhythm section needs to be like locked in and like on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And like the guitarist is like, if you're going to play rhythms and you're going to be playing heavy music, it needs to be tight, right? So if like the two guitarists are playing roughly the same thing, like if you're harmonizing notes, you're picking the guitar the same way, right? Like whether it's like tremolo picking, whether it's like just whatever, like letting chords ring or just chugging, like you're doing the same thing. As long as you're on the same page, as like in that sense for guitarists, it's easier to find a guitarist that fits somewhere, plus more people play guitar. But the really solid bassists and the really solid drummers that are like like working as a unit, that's like where the magic comes from.
I feel like a lot of bass players too are originally guitar players that got given a bass, but like, here, we can't find a bass player. Why don't you play guitar, or why don't you play bass?
Yeah, I've seen that happen a few times.
But so, anyways, I guess to keep this rolling here, the topics that we discuss obviously are some of the bad things you've encountered over time playing in bands. So, do you have any stories that you'd want to talk about?
Yeah, so they're mostly I guess they're mostly tour stories or like show related stories, like the bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I guess like funny enough, like this all happened, or a lot of like the bad stuff happened like on the same tour and on like the leg, like the same leg of the tour. So uh, I was we were doing a cross Canada tour, so we left Montreal and we drove to Vancouver and back. So it was like a 3 week thing. Going out west, there was like no problem. Like everything was great. Like we had good turnouts. We got paid everything that we were promised and sold merch and all that stuff. Then like on the way back, we had like this very like nebulous um like tour routing. So basically it was from Vancouver to Edmonton, which is like a 20 something hour drive. So let's call it like between 20 and 22 hours. So we make that drive and we get to the venue that we're supposed to play at, and there's like no one there. It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They said load in is at like 3:30. So we're like, okay, let's wait half an hour. We're waiting around. The guy comes in, open, like unlocks, go up to him. I'm like, hey, can we do our load in now? They're like, oh, is there a show tonight? I'm like, yeah. We're from Montreal. We just drove from Vancouver like 20 something hours. And the guy's like, oh, crap, like, what am I going to do now? So he's like checking through the emails. And this is like back in like the MySpace days. So he's
The
like, who
glory
booked?
days.
Yeah, the glory days, man. It was like some good times. But he's like, he looks at me and he says, who booked this show? And I'm like, hold on, let me check my MySpace messages. So I log in. I see the name of the person. I mention the name, and I'm like, yeah, who's that? And he says, oh, that's me. I'm like, oh my god, like our blood went cold, like collectively.
How
Like
did not
for
remember he booked a fucking show?
I don't know, man. I don't know. He got like I think he started sweating, and he got two bands to just like show up. We played like in front of them and their girlfriends. We sold like a pin for like $1. It was ridiculous. Like we were supposed to get paid like $300, $350 or something like that, and he had agreed to it. He turns around, he's like, yeah, I got $40 for gas money. I'm like, what, bro?
That's
Where
not
are you
going to get you
going?
anywhere.
No, like we had a full van, like full of stuff. Four dudes that like were like tired and hungry. We didn't have a place to sleep. And I turn around to him and I say, listen, man, we just drove from Vancouver like 20 something hours. Now we're going to drive to Timmins, Ontario, which is like another 28 hours. Like, like, does anyone like have a place for us to like to crash or whatever? Like, no one was willing like to let us crash at their place, understandably. Like, you just got called for like a gig, like an emergency gig. Like, who's going to give you a place to sleep, right?
Yeah.
This guy's turning around and he's saying like $40. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. Like this is like 10% of what we agreed to. And like what could we do? Like we weren't gonna like tear his place apart or whatever. Like we just like packed it up, said, okay, screw it, it's a glorified band practice, and we put all our stuff in the van and decided, okay, we're just gonna keep on trucking and we're gonna go to the next show, and the next show is gonna be great. So we drove 28 hours. And I think in those 28 hours, the four of us didn't like, we had never contemplated killing each other more. So, like, yeah, we were just trying to like pass off the responsibility of driving to the next guy because it was just so much driving. We had just done like a ton of driving previously, right, to get to this. to this crappy show, and like we were switching every like 4 hours or every 3 hours to keep ourselves fresh, and then it was like every 2 hours, and then it was every 40 minutes, and we're getting on each other's nerves, and like there was a lot of like falling asleep and swerving, and we didn't know what to do. So like we're lucky enough, like up in the middle of like nowheresville in like in Canada, like our main highway across the entire country, it's like a 2-lane highway, right, with like no lights, no nothing. So like we're in the middle of like a forest or something. We stop and we're like, okay, let's just take a quick snooze. So the sketchiest like hour of our life. And like we woke up, we continued driving. Luckily there was like a service station like an hour or two away. We ended up like sleeping at that service station for like a good part of the rest of the night. And like we're just like so defeated. And we're like, okay, listen, we're gonna like put on a brave face. We're in the next city now, it's morning. We're gonna relax a bit and have some coffee, eat some breakfast, like just kind of just get through the day, and we'll do load in at 4 o'clock, like the guy said. So we get to the venue, and we're ready to load in, and there's a guy there, but it's not the guy who booked the show, it's someone else. And I'm like, do you know where so and so is? And he's like, oh, why are you asking about him? I'm like, well, because he had booked a concert for us. We're from Montreal. And he's like, oh, let me try getting him on the phone because I don't know anything about a concert. And we look at each other and we're like, God, this can't happen 2 nights in a row. And sure enough, he's like, the guy who we were talking to said, okay, well, the promoter said he's going to be on his way soon. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Because like, do we have a concert here or not? We just drove from Edmonton. Like we drove for over a day, like straight practically. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. He said he's coming, so he should be here soon. So it's like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I'm like, man, this show is supposed to start at like 7. And like I had seen a flyer. Like that's the worst part about it, right? Like in like going to Edmonton the previous show, like I hadn't seen a flyer. I just kind of took it for granted. And I was like, listen, like, there's a lot of shows that we're booking all at once. Everything else seemed to like make sense. And I was like, hey, whatever. We were going through there anyways. So when we get to this place, I'm like, okay, well, what about these other bands? Message the other bands, no one's answering us. So we get on a call with, or we try to call the promoter again. Now he's not answering, leaving messages on MySpace and nothing. So, like at this point, we're like super frustrated. And the next night was in Sudbury, so it was like maybe a 5-hour drive from Timmins or so. And the guy who was putting on that show, like we knew. So like I messaged him. I'm like, dude, do you know this guy? And he says, yeah, why? What happened? I'm like, well, this and this. And I explained to him the situation. He's like, man, like forget it. It's like you're not gonna even meet that guy. You're not gonna see your money. Like your night is a wash. Like just forget it. Like just cool your heels, and when you show up here tomorrow, I'll take care of you. So like now we're thinking like we've slept in the van like 4 nights in a row, but like we didn't take a trailer because like we were just super efficient at like packing our stuff in the van. So like the van has like four pilot seats. We've been like sleeping almost like upright for like 4 days straight while also like driving like nonstop. It's not like we had like room in the back of the van to like lay down and stretch our legs or whatever. So at this point we're like, okay, we need a place to sleep. Like I don't know where we're gonna sleep, but we need somewhere to sleep. And the guy who was at the venue, who was like trying to help us get in touch with the promoter, says, hey, if you guys want a place to sleep, we have rooms upstairs. And we're like, listen, man, that's very nice, but we don't have any money like to spend on renting the rooms. He's like, no, you don't have to rent anything. I'll let you guys sleep here for free. Don't worry about it. He's like, there's even a shower if you want upstairs. You can take a shower and this and that.
That was nice of him.
Like it was very nice of him. So we go upstairs, and he's like, oh, by the way, this door doesn't have we don't have the key to this door, so I'm gonna open it up with this. And he pulls out like this giant Bowie knife, and he like kind of basically like he shoved the Bowie knife into the slit of the door. He cracked open the latch, and he's like, "Listen, you guys could sleep here. Just lock it from the inside. But I just want you to know that this is a halfway house, and the guy who was staying here has left, and it's been like 2 weeks he hasn't been here. But I think he still has the key. That's why we don't have the key. So if he shows up, like, just be warned." And we're like, "What? Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, we're gonna sleep here? Like, I said, like, you know what? Screw it. We're just gonna sleep here." And we ended up crashing in that room. And like I remember like waking up like every like hour or so being like, someone's gonna kill us, like someone's gonna like I and I'm not a very fidgety type in the least, but like I don't know, man, I kept getting like this bad feeling. And at that point I was like, you know what, like I have to take a shower. So I go in the shower and I'm like, it was the most disgusting thing, but I was like, listen, at least it's accommodation. I took the fastest non-floor touching shower I've ever taken in my life, and I got the hell out of there. I was like, oh God, like what is this? Like 2 nights in a row, like just this stacked cases of bad luck. And I was like, let's get out of like this part of the tour and like hope the next part of the tour is good. Luckily, like the next couple of dates up until we went home were decent. So like that like really lifted our spirits, man. But that like stretch of, it was 2 shows, but it was a stretch of almost like four days or so, because
Yeah.
we were driving, yeah, from Vancouver. We left Sunday morning and we got there like Monday early afternoon, and then like we left Edmonton, Jesus, must have been like 10 o'clock at night. Then we got to Sudbury, must have been like 10 in the morning or something like that. Like not even the next day, the day after that. So
Almost like
like
36
almost
hours later.
yeah, like we burned through like practically a week just being like disappointed and disgusting. So like
Yeah.
we had a joke where like we're running out of like peanut butter, and like we're eating peanut butter and ham sandwiches because we ran out of bread. And like we had to go get some more peanut butter, otherwise we'd have to start like eating ourselves to keep it going. But yeah, it was brutal, man. Like those two experiences like back to back were just like such compounded like crap that it was, I think those were probably the two worst experiences we've had on the road, like collectively or like even just by myself, because like it was rough, man. It was rough.
No.
There were other nights too. Like we had played a show. It was weird. It was like a double venue kind of thing. So like you had one venue on top, one venue on the bottom, and we were booked on the same night as like a pretty popular band. Like at the time, and like everyone was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, don't worry, we're gonna come to your show." And like we were like outside of Montreal at this point. Like we were touring. It was like maybe like our second or third show outside of out of town, or maybe like I don't know, in the first like batch of shows that we really started like being road warriors. And freaking we went on last that on our show, like when the other band was playing like downstairs, and we were just seeing people like file out. Like we'd play like we're on our second song or third song or something like that, and I just started people like filing out like in waves, and I'm like, what is this? And then there was like no one left, and the promoter turned around and said, I don't have your money. I'm like, but what about all these people that paid to get in here? Like it's $100. Like you have $100. And they're like, and it like unfortunately like for us, this promoter was turned out to be like underage, and it was an all ages venue, so like that's how they managed to book it. And we're just like, okay, you know what, good band practice. And we just packed it up and like, well, what are we gonna do, like threaten a 16-year-old or whatever, 17-year-old kid? Like we never got our money, but what are you gonna do? Like there's sketchy promoters who are like in their 30s and stiff bands for more, right? So
Yeah, that's
we just
actually
said,
happened locally with us. So
yeah, it's tough, man. Like it's a kid. What do you want me to do? Like the kid, it's a kid, immature mentality, doesn't understand that you make a promise to someone or to like a group of people, you better be keeping it. Like we're not raging psychopaths, so we didn't like destroy the place or anything like that. We just said okay, thanks, and like put them on the do not call list or whatever. So
that
we
kind of
just
stuff
moved.
happens. Not trying to interrupt, but like that happens so often or not. And I think a lot of the listeners out here don't understand how much that really does go on.
Oh yeah.
Like you travel, you have to think about it in this aspect. Most bands that are on tour don't have a lot of money to go off with, anyways. You have to pay for your fuel, your food,
Hmm.
your lodging. Like a lot of that stuff, like you might have some money set aside for it, but you're leaving a job if you're working. So you're not getting paid while you're out on the road. And the only set of money you have is selling merch or getting paid at the door. And a lot of the time, you're not getting paid to play these shows.
No, no, the pay is very not dependable.
And
It's there's a lot of stuff that like I guess like the fans or like people who aren't in bands or haven't experienced it don't see. Like there's a lot of I guess drudgery is the best word to put it, because it's just such a slosh, man. Like you're busting your chops to learn your music, to hone your craft, to like, and like then you're teaching yourself how to be a good performer, like you're trying to like feel it out, see like what the crowd likes, what the crowd doesn't like. And like I've seen it, man, with like we've played shows where the crowd was like there was a full crowd, they'd been like really into it the whole show, this and that. And like if it wasn't for like having like a very lucky night on merch sales, like we would have gotten like super stiffed, right? Like if they had promised us X, they would come with half of X or whatever. It was just it's just been like something that we don't really talk about as musicians, because like at the same time like you have the image to maintain, and with like social media now being like so invasive and prevalent, like you can't show that you're having a bad time, right? Or that someone stiffed you without like rubbing people the wrong way or seeming like you're
you're,
complaining, and
or seem like you're
right,
entitled.
or seem like you're entitled. It's like, yeah, man, I'm entitled. Imagine telling like a roofing contractor, yeah, I'm not like come do the work. I don't have like the 5 or 10 grand that it costs to fix my roof, but give me your business cards and I'll hand them out.
Free
Like
exposure.
free exposure. Yeah, it's free exposure. Like get out of here, man. Like pay me my $200. We're 5 guys, 4 guys, whatever it is. It's like $40 a head, and it's not even going to the person. It's going to the fuel tank, to the other like fixed expenses that the band has. Like
Maybe a
stuff's not
sandwich
cheap.
somewhere.
A sandwich somewhere, yeah. Like you can only eat so much hand and peanut butter. Then
Yeah.
you need to get some bread going too. So
For
it's
future
crazy, man.
reference, I've read in places that a human can survive on a spoonful of honey a day. So maybe
Yeah, but
takes,
honey's like $10 a kilo, man. Like
yeah,
it's expensive stuff.
yeah. I'd say maybe pack in a little bit of honey and some peanut butter and make some peanut butter and honey sandwiches. It'll last you a little bit longer.
Yeah, we were going nuts eating that stuff, man. Like we were big fans of beans, and we would always get the Clark's beans.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was like our standard, like if all else fails thing. Like we got this like 49 or 69 cent bean can or whatever it was. And then one time we found Heinz beans on special for like I don't know 19 cents a can, something like ridiculously like small, like low price compared to the Clarks. And we're like, okay, let's get these. But it was only me and the guitarist that said let's get these. The bassist and the drummer were like, no, we're gonna stick with the Clarks. So we ate our can of Heinz beans, and after a while, man, it just hit us. Like before going on stage, it was No, like no bueno. And we just yeah, there was an upheaval, like a gastronomical upheaval, I guess you could say, and it was just, man, I should have sprung for the Clarks,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was another like less than glamorous part of being on the road. So
The stories that no one really ever knows until you encounter them yourself.
yeah, it's something, man. It's something. We had played a festival actually a couple of hours from Montreal. So we were expecting like this big stage. It had been promoted like it was a big deal, this and that. We get there and it's on the side of a highway and like in a dilapidated house. So the house, it's like a three-story house with no like backside. So wherever like where the back porch would be or whatever was like kind of open. And we were playing like on the second floor, and like the crowd was in like the backyard or the field or whatever because it was in like it was off the highway close to Quebec, but it was like in it was like in a big open field type of thing. And there was this there was this one car battery that was powering the whole thing, and like my guitarist plugs in his amp and turns it on, and everything just shut down. And then they had to like flip the breaker because like his amp was like too powerful to run off the car battery. And then my bassist turned his bass amp on, and it was the same thing. I was just like, oh my god, like there's no way we're gonna like this house is gonna collapse and we're gonna die. And to make matters worse, the load in was done over like this really sketchy like little bridge. Like there was like a maybe like a 10-foot drop or something like that between like the main like road or whatever, and then like leading to this house. It was like the ricketiest bridge ever, and we're going like we're carrying amps over this thing. We're carrying like drum piece kits over this thing. I'm like, oh my god, like what is this? And I don't know, I had the wherewithal to ask the promoter. I'm like, hey, so listen, I know we don't have like a big payout, but you have our money, right? And he's like, yeah, I might not have the money, but do you guys want some cocaine? I was like, oh my god. So I started laughing. I'm like, nah, man, seriously. And he's like, and he starts laughing. And my drummer comes by and he's like, what's so funny? I'm like, nah, he doesn't have the money, but he offered us cocaine. My drummer starts laughing and he's like, no, seriously though, like all joking aside. And he's like, the promoter's like, okay, well, all joking aside, yeah, if you guys want the cocaine, I have some cocaine. I'm like, oh my god, bro, like it's $100, like we drove like 2-3 hours, like it's not a big overhead for us, like just $100. So like we ended up playing. There was a pig roast advertised. There was like a pig that had been like slaughtered and just left in the sun with a beer bottle in its butt. And it was just like sitting there like in the sun rotting. Yeah. And I was like, oh my god, this thing's so rancid. And they cooked it and ate it from what I found out.
That's
yeah,
even...
I don't know, man.
What type of festival was this?
This was like, it was supposed to be like a death grind festival, but I don't know what the hell was going on. Like it was just chaos. It was like Lord of the Flies meets like a metal festival.
Sounds intense.
God, dude, I was like, we played and then we packed up and we're like, all right, listen, we have an emergency back in Montreal. We just bounced. Like there was no way. Like we couldn't, man. Like we thought like something was gonna happen to us or God knows what, like cops were gonna come or something, or yeah, get sacrificed or whatever.
I've always wondered, and I have another podcast that I do. I've been taking some time off from it, but it's a conspiracy, paranormal / like crazy stories podcast. I interview other people who've had these weird experiences. And I've always wondered if anyone like in a band has ever come across like, I don't know how to describe it. Basically like not so much like a cult, but almost like a cultish vibe. Like when you go to a place to play and like you play for like this group of people and they're almost like, I don't want to say satanic because that's like a stereotype, I think, when it comes to playing in metal. But like they've ever tried to enlist people into their group. Like if they've ever encountered something like that when they've been out on the road, like they've ran into these weird cultish type people, I guess, at these shows or something.
Man, like luckily I don't think we had ever like seen anything sketchy like that. One time though, like my bassist got approached because he was like having a smoke outside the venue, and like this guy comes up to him and he's like, "Are you coming to the orgy after?" And he's like, no, why? Was I invited?" And the other guy was like, "Okay, never mind." And my bassist was like, "Yo, I just got invited to an orgy." I'm like, listen, dude, I don't think we're going to an orgy tonight. You know, like it was
Yeah.
just it was just like so weird. Like just like Jesus. Like you see all sorts, right? Like listen, man, there's all sorts of people in life, good and bad, like, weird and like vanilla and like not so vanilla. So
That could have
like
been
whatever, man.
the
That could have been
initiation, though. They could have lured him into making the sacrifice of the night.
God. And then we'd have to find another bassist. Good luck with that.
Yeah. No, I
But yeah.
on one of the episodes that just came out recently, we had interviewed someone from out in Arizona, and I listened to another podcast, and I'd brought it up and asked because he was out in like the desert area. There's stories out from like the deserts of, I don't know if it's Nevada or Arizona or maybe in California or whatever, but they've have like these big raves or whatever out in the middle of nowhere. They're like
Mhm.
they're gothic and vampire. People like try and drink blood and they try and do like weird sacrifice, satanic. I don't know. But I asked him about that and he had never heard anything about it. I was like, well, maybe it's not as popular as the guy was making it sound like. He's like, he got that story was the guy was met up with some stranger at a bar. He was at a club and started talking to this guy. He's like, hey, I got this cool party we're going to go to. And he went to another bar, and all of a sudden it turned out to they're going way out here in the middle of nowhere and ended up becoming like a big thing to where he thought he was going to get sacrificed to this like crazy cult type people. I was like, that's what kind of got me thinking about it. Like, I wonder if anybody had been in bands that have ever encountered someone because you're not from that area if you're on tour. So it'd be easy for like, hey, come with us. We're going to let you here crash the night with us or something. And then they take you back to their place. And it's just some sketchy cult type thing. I don't know. I guess I'm a weirdo when I think about stuff like that, but I'm paranoid. Like when
Dude, no, you're. It's not unfounded. Like, listen, the one thing that like happened to us that was like it was sketchy at the time was like we ended up staying like we're going to this to one of the band's houses to sleep, and like it was just super strange, man. Like there was like tortoises everywhere. Like there was like two or three tortoises that they had as pets, and they were watching Cannibal Holocaust, and um like that's like a I don't know, like a 70s like
yeah, I know what it
film
is.
or whatever, you know what it is. And there's
It's
like a
got the
big
big turtle mutilation scene in it.
yeah, exactly. And they're like they were talking about the turtle mutilation. I'm looking at these tortoises, I'm like, what the hell is this? And then like we just like decided, okay, like we're just gonna leave and drive back to Montreal tonight. So we did. And then like funny enough, like they message us like a couple weeks later and they seemed okay, and we're like, "Okay, whatever." And then when we went back to that city, like they ended up being the coolest guys ever. And then like the tortoises were still alive. Like the one guy was like, "Oh man, I love my turtles. I'd never hurt them." I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, man! Like we thought like you guys were gonna kill these things and eat them, like make us eat them, like
Some weird ass
they're
stuff.
like looking at us like, Jesus, man, guys from Montreal are weird. I'm like, well, we had no idea, like we were so naive, right? And I don't know. I guess like there's like a certain naivete you have to have like to leave your comfort zone and to like assume everything's gonna work out.
Yeah.
So like call it like gumption, call it naivety or whatever, but yeah, man, like if you don't have that, good luck surviving out there. But I haven't like encountered personally anyone on tour that would do that like wanted to like enlist us or anything. Funny enough, in Montreal actually, like there was a couple of people that like had found out that I had been in music like when I was during my hiatus, and they were like approaching me for like a couple of weird stuff. I was like, listen, man, I'm not into that, like you know, they were talking about like come to our thing, you know, hang out. It's you know, you can get to like learn about all these secrets, like the hidden secrets. I'm like, yeah, okay. I have to like pay a fee for this and like dedicate my time, and like I don't think so. Like, you know, like I already went through that, like being in bands, like paying my fee like every month so I could have a place to jam and like afford equipment and whatever else. And like getting belittled, like I don't need to join like some other thing that you know, makes me have to like force me to believe something weird or whatever. Just like no thanks.
It's almost like
Because
a weird religion type thing.
yeah, it is, man. Like it is. Because like once you start like creating a lifestyle for yourself and like cementing like your beliefs in something or in the lifestyle itself, it becomes a little bit like a religion, right? So like you do have like when they say like I do something religiously, whether you're a religious person or not, it means like something that's habitual, right? So if it's part of your lifestyle, you're doing it religiously. And if it's like, you know, if it's taking the dog for a walk like twice a day or whatever, 3 times a day, that's one thing. Going to the gym like a couple of times a week, that's one thing. But like if your thing is like going and like reading from like leather bound books and like in a dark room with a candle burning in front of like 20 other guys or whatever, like man, it's cool. I'll just stay home. I'll go record some stuff like when my kids asleep, when my wife's watching some TV or whatever the case is. You know, like I'm good, thanks.
Definitely. That's not a something
Yeah,
that sounds
that's
very appealing to me, but
some people have a misguided a misguided compass when it comes for like their thirst for knowledge. But listen, man, to my at least my opinion of it is like you'll like if you're like a decently like mature adult, you'll realize that what you want out of life is inside of you already, and you just have to find a way to like understand like your own thoughts and find a way to like present like your beliefs to someone while like being able like to communicate it clearly enough and without like you know like necessarily like ruining someone else's day type of thing, right? So like you know if you believe like if you believe in like a higher power is one thing. If you believe in like, if you don't believe in anything, that's cool too. You know, like it doesn't matter like what it is as long as like you're not like you're not like preaching like yeah, destroy this, destroy that. Like you know you can't like the answers are within, I guess what I'm trying to say. Like they're the outward search for knowledge like is limited because like you'll never find like enlightenment outside of yourself, you know. You'll find information, you'll find other people's experiences, um but you'll never find like the answer that you're looking for, you know. Like these people that like try to like use like what do you call it, like not vacations or you know, they try to run away from their problems by like leaving the country for like a year, 2 years, 3 years, like go backpacking. I mean, you're gonna learn about yourself, but it's not like you're gonna find yourself. Like you have yourself, and you can't run away from your problems, especially like if your problem is you. You know what I mean? Like if you don't like yourself at a certain like the way that you are in the current moment, and you're trying to like say to yourself that you're gonna fix yourself by like going out and like having these different experiences, that's not how it works, you know. Like you have to like maybe detach yourself from the notion of finding yourself rather than realizing like who you are and what you are like on your own, you know. Like leaving a place could be beneficial for whatever reason, but like going to lengths to like kind of separate yourself from like your old life might not necessarily be the like the awakening or the enlightenment, right? Because then when you're back in your own old environment, you pick up the same habits again. I mean, okay, it was cool like to backpack through like Southeast Asia for like a year, but what did you learn besides like banana pancakes are tasty and it's super cheap to vacation there or whatever?
I think a lot of the issues that people want to not acknowledge is the world is not always against them.
Mm,
A lot of the problems that people face start from within.
yeah.
And it takes someone to actually acknowledge that and to accept that and work on themselves rather than run away from it. And that can be in all aspects of life, with music, with personal lives, like relationships. Literally, it all starts with you. You
Yeah.
have to figure yourself out before you can really become attuned to everybody else.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. Like there's a lot of blaming in life, and like this has been going on since the dawn of time, you know, like since we as humans like develop language, I think we've always like looked for ways like to justify the things that happen to our life, like in our lives, like to us, like good or bad, and say like, oh yeah, like if I did something good and like there was a good payoff, it's because I worked hard and had luck on my side, or like someone was watching over me type of thing. And if something bad happens, it's like, well, it's like so and so's fault, this person's fault, like this other group's fault, this, like you just try to find a way to justify why you didn't get your way through blaming other people, right? When it's like, listen, there's two things in life, results and excuses, like I don't want to sound like a motivational speaker, but like it's all there is, right? Like you do something and you succeed. If you don't succeed, you didn't succeed. Like if in rare cases do you see like people actually like actively trying to hold someone down, like let's say politically or whatever, like, and that's usually like in like high stakes situations, like with the individuals involved. Like find it hard to say that every single like aspect of a person's life is ruined by like one other person or like bad luck or whatever the case is, right? Like if you show up and do the work, like in your own life, whether it's like music or anything else, like having your own business or whatever, if you're not there, like doing your stuff, no one's gonna do it for you. Like we're all like trying to avoid eating a turd sandwich, so just do your best and to move on. Like no one's
Yeah.
gonna, and the truth is like no one cares if like to make you fail. Like even like people that are jealous of you, like they're not gonna go out of their way to make you fail. Like it seems like such a defeatist attitude to me. Like, man, like I'm sure I've pissed off people, and like I don't think any of them are thinking to themselves, man, I'm gonna do this and this to screw Jimmy over because of whatever the thing is. Like, come on, man. Like they're really like taking, am I that egotistical to think that some guy I pissed off a year ago was still thinking about me? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, bro, like your mom doesn't even think about you. Like, just nut up or shut up. Like and move on with life.
I've always,
That's
there's actually, there's some people around here. I won't get into it, but it always cracks me up because, again, it is true. Like, you're not always on someone's mind. And if you are on someone's mind that often that they think they have to get you, like, there's seriously something wrong with that person
yeah.
because you're not that important. Regardless of what you think, people aren't always spending their entire time thinking about trying to get you or someone's trying to sabotage your life or anything. Like if there are, then they clearly have some sort of vendetta that I don't know what the hell someone's done to them, but it's pretty sad to be honest.
Yeah.
But no, basically there's just people everywhere. And anyone listening, this isn't a excuse or anything like that, but everyone has to make their own decisions and their own choices to put themselves into a better situation with their own self.
Yeah.
It takes
Yeah.
work, it takes effort, it takes dedication. That can be for
It's
music, it can be for anything. Without that desire, without that passion, you're setting yourself up for failure.
yeah, 100%. And it could be hard and scary, man. Like it's not like we're speaking like very matter of factly, but like for some people, like they could have like let's say the technical knowledge to do the thing that they want to do, and they're just like terrified to do it. But like I don't know, man, like just do it. Like just like Nike says, like just do it. Like if you don't do it, you're never gonna get it done. You know, like if I didn't pick up a guitar and start playing and writing and teaching myself, I would have never like moved on musically. If I didn't teach myself music production, I wouldn't be able like to be making music that I'm happy to record and release and share with people, you know? Like it just doesn't make sense. Just do it. Like if it's something that obviously like it's because most things in life are like low stakes, I find, right? Like there's a very few high stakes moves that you can make in life. Like if you're like barring like being in like an abusive environment or something like that, um, you know, like if you're just like a regular schmo, like going through life, like there's no reason to be afraid because like if you're afraid, imagine like the next 10 people, you know, like they're
Hmm.
probably average like you, they're afraid, you know, like why are you going to be like them? Just do it. Like there's a reason why like all these like musicians are incredible that like you know we look up to, we see it all over the place, they're like plastered like crazy because they they picked up their stuff and they just played, you know, like name a guitarist that's incredible, it's because they picked up their guitar and they started playing. Name a singer that's incredible, they practiced their voice, you know, like a drummer was same thing, bassist, pianist, whatever man, like anything, like you know, even like a salesman that's good, it's because they practice, you know, like you're in something like a salesman or a mechanic or something like just like the you know, regular non-creative jobs, it's because you practice and you train that muscle, you know, you don't care what other people think or the way they're looking at you or whatever, you know, because it doesn't matter ultimately, you know. If my job is to be a salesman or a mechanic or a painter, like I don't care what they think if I'm painting their house, you know, like oh look at him, he's painting the house. Yeah, okay, thanks. That'll be like $1,000 a room or whatever their going rate is for a painter, right? So like just do it, do it. Just grab your instrument, play. Who gives a shit what other people think? You know, like hopefully eventually someone's gonna like your music. As long as you like your music and it's something that you would listen to yourself, that's where the first small success is,
Yep.
I think. You
Yeah, I
know,
agree. If you enjoy what you're doing, that's all that really matters.
yeah, you know, and like if it's not something that's like high stakes, like oh I have to make it, and that's like also like self-imposed pressure and stress, you know, like when we were before we took our hiatus, like we had put a lot of pressure on ourselves to like make it to the next level, you know, like we're climbing and climbing and climbing and working and grinding as much as we could, and we're like okay well, next label release going to be like a bigger label, it's going to help us get on like more more like bigger tours, longer tours. We're going to be able like to quit our job because we could like skate by going away for like 3 4 5 months at a time, and it didn't pan out, and we like the four of us just stopped playing music like at the same time, and then when we chose to like restart music, it was together, right? So like I had maybe like done I'd done like one project with a buddy of mine, but that was just like laying down some vocals for a couple of songs, and like that was like in 2017, and those songs still aren't released. So you know, like he's still working on them and like he's tweaking some stuff, but like it's been a while, man. Like you know, just you gotta just do it. Like
Hmm.
can't be afraid of anything. Like judgment, like come on man, like every producer was judged on their first thing and like everyone forgot about it like a week later, you know, like it doesn't matter. Like Rick Rubin said, you always have to be working on the next project.
What labels
And
did you guys deal with? Because I've heard horror stories with dealing with labels. Is that anything you've ever really had to mess with?
with Sinistry, we only really dealt with Year of the Sun Records in Ontario. They actually treated us very nicely.
That's good.
Yeah, we've got a music video out of the deal with them. They helped us with press. They were pushing for us really hard. But like after like we toured for that album, we wanted to go like to a bigger label like Century Media or Nuclear Blast or something like that. We were like trying to hit it big, I guess you could say, like, or like some of our friends had gotten like successful, so like that was like on our like viewfinder, I guess you could say. And maybe we could have stuck it out and like done something on the album after that album, but it wasn't in the cards at the time. With Through Mists, I gotta say, like every label I've dealt with for like either like a compilation release or like an official release has been very fair to me. Like, so basically they let me retain the rights to my song. Like basically they release my song in physical format, and we do like some sort of split on the streaming or something like that, which is all like very small, right? So like they're fronting all the cash to print whatever it is they print, and they're handling like the postage and getting the stuff out to whoever orders it. And like that's their risk, and my risk is, well, like I want the music to perform well, and I don't want to like screw over this person who like took a shot on my album or whatever. So I mean, the labels that I've dealt with that have treated me really good. Trepanation Recordings, actually, he's putting out a double album of mine on June 30th. So that's going to be out like on Bandcamp, obviously, and on streaming platforms everywhere. So the album is called Shipwreck, and the other album is called Chronosphere. So that's pretty cool. Like, Dan is a very cool guy. He released another album of mine in last year in 2022 called Kingdom of the Sky. So he's always been easy to work with, very upfront. There was Shane from Morningstar Heathens. He put out another album of mine last year. And the newest label that I'm working with is a label in Vancouver called Syrup Moose Records. So they're very interesting. Like, they have a very interesting like way they go about the artists that they work with. Like, they don't sign, like, you're not signing your songs away to indie labels, right? So they do like a limited tape run, and if the limited tape run does well and like sells out, they'll like press a vinyl at some point, or like do some other type of physical release. So it's interesting. Like, there's a lot of like indie labels and like net labels, I guess you can call them, that you have to weed through and like find the right fit. But it's not just so much like the genre, it's the people that you're working with. So, right, like, these guys have helped me in one way or another, and luckily no one's like pocketed money from me, like whatever little money like black and death metal is gonna make these days. So
Yeah. I was thinking, like, in today's landscapes, labels are almost not really necessary to an extent if you could have the ability to get it out there on your own.
yeah,
Obviously, like with DistroKid, it's like $20 for the whole year to put your own music out there. So
yeah,
sometimes it's like, just from what I've been talking with other people and looking into it myself, obviously, because I've been in bands too, it's like the label is basically making money off of you. Well, some of them are.
hmm
And some of them actually make the bands pay them, which I think's
oh
peculiar.
no, forget
Peculiar.
that, man.
And
Forget
like,
that.
what exactly are they doing for you that you can't do yourself? Why am I paying someone to do this? They should be trying to get us exposure. But if I'm paying them to do this, then I can just hire my own PR person and my own booking agent, and not really need this label because I can release everything online myself.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. Like, you have to find the label that's not sketchy, business wise and whatever, because like I've been approached by like a few labels that like want me to put like half whatever up front for like CD pressing and this. Then I'm like, listen, dude, like, I'm not paying anything up front. Like, I hadn't paid up front before for a label. Like, it's why would I need you? You know, like you said it yourself. I have a DistroKid account. I could just release the music, and I want to press. If I want to press the CDs or whatever, um, myself, I'll just do it. You know, like instead of paying you $2,000, I'll do it myself for like $500 or whatever it is, and I can control the pricing. I can control everything that has to do with it, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
like the rest of the money, if I wanted to spend $2,000 on a release, I'll throw into PR and have someone like supercharge the PR and the exposure of the album. Like there's labels today, I think, like let's say like labels on the scope that I work with, it's more for building like the sense of the community and finding a way to like unite different musicians and fans together, more than it is for like quote unquote being on a label to say that you're on a label and you made it and you're successful and special and all that jazz. Like the bigger labels like Nuclear Blast or Century Media, like these players, I think, are more for like the heavy hitting bands that you kind of like expect them to be on a label, just kind of traditionally speaking. And the label also, for whatever reason, like buys you some sort of clout, right? So like if I'm a very like hungry young band that wants to go on tour for like 300 days out of the year, yet I have like a release on Spotify that has like 100 monthly listeners, no booking agent is going to look at me serious and say, okay, well, you have an album out on like Spotify or whatever streaming platform, you have like 100 listeners a month, you have like 5 sales on Bandcamp, and what am I supposed to do with you? You know, like at that point, like who, like what booking agent will like help you get booked onto like a unimportant, quote unquote, important tour, right? So it's very catch-22. But then like there's also things like tour buy-ons where let's say like a big band is playing, or like a relatively like big band is playing in you as like a small band who want to buy on the tour. Like you could pay a certain price like to be on the tour and then hope that you recoup that money, and like through like your guarantees of the show and through merch sales. So there
Which
is that avenue. But I mean,
that's hard to do.
yeah, that's very tough. You know, like if you're playing like with a band that usually fills like a place with 1,000 people, or like let's say between like 1,000 and 2,000 people, you're looking at like 10 grand to 15 grand to buy on.
Yep.
You know, and then like okay, you're doing that for like 20 days or whatever, 20 to 30 days. Are you gonna make that back and then make profit? And then like you have those expenses of like paying for the buy on, but then you have like your running costs, right? Like your fuel, your food, your hotels, or whatever the case is. You know, like if you need to bring a roadie on the road, who's going to man your merch station? Like you need tour specific merch, or you need like something special, right? Like if you've gone through a town like 4 or 5 times, why is this guy going to buy the same tired t-shirt?
I saw something
So
broken down a couple of years ago, and it was for like a 30-day tour for like a
mhm,
metal band. And I forget the metal band. I think it might have been Diarda's Murder or something like that.
mhm.
They need to make, it would cost them to pay their people and everything else. They would have to make like, I think for the, it's supposed to be like 40 grand for just the touring expenses themselves. That's not them getting anything out of it. That's just to cover the cost of them to go on tour for 30 days was $40,000.
Jesus. Could you
That's,
imagine? Yeah, could you imagine like what other industry do you know where it costs you over $1,000 a day to work?
yeah, that's insane.
Like it's I don't know, man. Like the system is like a bit broken. Like I'm not the only one who says this, but it's true. And like bands get stiffed, but and I get it, man. Venues cost money to run, to staff, you know, licenses for their alcohol, all this jazz, their lights, their sound, security. It costs money, and like still, dude, like you're not even like thinking about that point, like the touring staff for the
Hmm.
band, right? So it gets pricey, man. And then like venues now, I hear are starting to charge like a cut of the merch.
Yep. Merch fees. We talked about that
It's
on a few episodes. One of the
it's
recent
ridiculous.
episodes we recorded, someone they were getting told that they couldn't sell their merch for a specific price because the headlining band's prices were more than what they were asking. So they told them they had to sell at the same price of what the headliners were asking for. And they're like a small no name band, and the big headliners selling their stuff for like $30, $40 a shirt. So the small band that's selling for 10 or 15 have to jack their prices all the way up.
Jesus.
Yeah. That's the type of shit that goes on apparently these days.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, man. It's like you're set up for failure, right? So
That's the other thing that a lot of people don't understand is bands have to pay for their merch too. Like unless you've got some sort of endorsement contract worked out with some sort of company, like printing company, like you have to pay for your design work, the artwork. You've got to pay for the shirts to get pressed, your CDs to get pressed. Like there's so many costs that go into being in a band, not to mention your instruments, your strings, your sticks,
yeah.
everything gear wise, your travel expenses. Like you said, if you have to hire a roadie, you have to pay for the vehicle you're using. If you're using a van, you got to usually rent the van, or if they're big time, they get a bus, I guess. I don't know. Never been on a bus before.
I would not rent a bus, man. It's too expensive. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, at some point, it doesn't make sense not to have a bus too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like, we calculated and like we did like real world examples of like touring in the van, just the four of us with the gear in like the cargo part of the van versus a small trailer with all our gear because like we were very like compact and efficient with the gear that we used, and putting the trailer caused so much extra fuel burn that it got us half the travel distance for the same amount of gas. So we said, man, like if we're gonna like fill up the tank with like let's say $100, and it's gonna get us like 7 hours away or 8 hours away from Montreal for like $100 at the time at least. Um, are we gonna start playing only like places 4 hours away so that we can make that $100 stretch? Or are we gonna start asking for double the amount of guarantee for no reason? Like, I mean, it's not the promoters, like at our stage at least, not like the promoter's job to like subsidize our gas consumption, but like that's a choice that we would make, right? Like we would have to choose to buy a trailer, deal with the cost of owning and operating the trailer, and then the fuel costs added to the vehicle to even move the thing. Because like, man, I saw that fuel gauge going down with the trailer. I was like losing my mind. There's no way. Like, there's no way. Like, it was literally half the amount of kilometers that we were doing. So, like, yeah, that's how it was. We went to London, Ontario, and we would play in London a lot. So it's like 7.5 hours from Montreal. And usually we could $100 or $120 of fuel from like empty or close to empty would get us to London, and then we would use whatever money we got in our guarantee to come back or whatever how many shows we were doing to cover the fuel costs, right? And then like I remember we played with the Agonist before like they started touring, um, like they started hitting like their big tours and stuff. And we played in Hamilton and London, and they took the trailer going down, and we took the trailer coming back because I think there was something they had to do something with their van or I don't even know what, but we were coming back, and it was us and a few of them in our van towing the trailer. And I'm just looking at the fuel, and like my guitarist like, okay, we got to stop for gas. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? We've been driving for like 2.5 hours. He's like, yeah, well, we're getting low. I'm like, what the hell? And then they confirmed it after. Like, yeah, fuel costs like skyrocket with pulling the trailer. And like the four of us in our band said, okay, listen, executive decision. We always have to find a place to sleep because the cargo part of the van is going to be filled with gear. and
Mhm.
like we couldn't, like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna go smaller? Like we had, like, at least we only had like one guitar amp, like his stack or whatever, and then like one bass amp stack, and like my drummer's drum kit. Like my mic, cordless mic, was inside the bassist's rack. So, and luckily we had 4 pilot seats and we had 4 members. So,
It makes it real hard to sleep sitting up.
oh yeah, dude, especially whoever's sleeping in the driver's seat, oh, forget it.
Mm-hmm.
Forget it. It was rough. A couple of nights were rough like that, like I'd mentioned earlier, but there were some nights that we had good shows and good turnouts and we still slept in the van, and it was not fun at all.
I've never enjoyed sleeping in a vehicle. I've struggled to actually do it when I've drove across country for other reasons. Like I've pulled into gas station, rest stop areas and tried to sleep for a
Mhm.
couple hours, and I don't think I ever slept. Or
Yeah,
if I
no.
did, it was for like 5 seconds at a time, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. It's very tough. It's very tough to get comfortable and like to have like restful sleep.
Yeah.
Like because you're kind of exposed at the same time. Like the window, like how open is the window going to be, right? Like the window's open a crack. If it starts raining or it gets really windy, that's another thing. Like these are like, I guess, first world problems at the same time, but like, you take for granted quality sleep until you're on the road living the life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what
No.
I see. I mean, like, listen, if I have a son, and when he's old enough to choose to do this, if he wants to do this, if he asks me, like, what do I think? I'm gonna tell him that just go do it. If you really want to do it, do it. Because like, there's no point in wondering, right? Like, so I didn't have to live my life wondering what if. I don't think anyone else should, but I wouldn't scare him to the point to say like, oh yeah, be careful, because like whatever, you're in a park in some rest stop, and like a bear is gonna come and eat you, or some stupidity like that. Like we were told like the craziest stuff, man. Like we were going to Vancouver, they're like, oh, careful, the tectonic shift makes the roads uneven. There's pumas in the Rocky Mountains. I'm like, oh my God, bro, what do you think we're gonna do? Stop in the middle of the Rocky Mountains and like build a camp and sleep in the woods and like wait for like the wild animals to come eat us? Like very beautiful scenery though, like incredible, British Columbia. But it's, yeah, you know, you don't do stupid stuff when you're out in the wilderness or out on the road,
No.
hopefully. So
You never know what's
yeah.
out there too. Or who's
Nah,
out there.
dude, or who's out there? You want to like attract the wrong energy, right? So that's
Definitely.
yeah, you learn that with like life experience, and just like, have a good time, be respectful, keep your head down, I guess, for like a little bit of it. Like you don't need to be in anyone's face for no reason, especially like they're strangers. You don't know what people are going through in their lives, like even in your own hometown, like let alone like some like 50 hours away, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's my take on that. Like just be cool. Just be cool. Hopefully people will be cool back, and
No, I agree.
avoid the confrontation, and like fight for what's yours. But like, listen, there's limits, man. Like we got stiffed, right, on like pays and shows and stuff like that. Like what's the real alternative, right? Like be jerks and bash them on social media. That would have been useless. We would have burned the bridge, potentially, and like not necessarily with that promoter or whatever, but like anyone who deals with that promoter, or bands that, like other bands, or maybe even like a label like Googles you, and let's say like big label A is interested in you, and then they Google you and they see that you're talking crap about the promoter or a show and everything. It's a bad look. It's a bad look. Like if you got stiffed, deal with a person that stiffed you, and you don't need to make it public. Like you're not like in a class action suit against a corporation that like defrauded you. Like some guy stiffed you on $200, and like beer tickets. If that's the case, just don't work with them again. If anyone asks you, just be honest and like don't get too detailed about it. Like it's shitty to say, but like, what's the other recourse? You can go to small claims court for $200. Like it's useless to. You got to roll with the punches, which is unfortunate, and it's the reality of it, though, right? Like live gigging. I'm sure there's bigger, more established bands that have gotten screwed out of a payday or whatever the case is. So
Definitely. Well,
yeah.
I think we can wrap this one up. What we usually do is we play a song from the artist that we've interviewed at the end of the episode. So is there a specific song you would like to send that I can add to the end of this and you can talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. Is it like, would it have to be like on streaming already or no?
I just need an MP3 or a WAV file. So whatever you prefer
Oh,
to have on
perfect.
here, I just add it to the audio file when I put it into my DAW or my DAW or whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And I just add it on there at the very end. It's how we end every episode is with music from the guest we just talked to.
Oh, okay, perfect. So I'll send you the song Chronosphere from the one of the double albums coming out on June 30th. So it's the title track of the album, Chronosphere. It's the opening track, and it's actually one of my favorite songs that I've ever written, and it's got a lot of different dynamics in it. Like it touches a lot of melodic piano parts. There's a couple of like really like hard driving, like really like groovy yet brutal like metal parts, like really really like driving the point home. There's like a weird little like dance break that I put towards the end of the song. It's just, for me, it was one of the most fun songs to like write and then just like realize it from conception to final result. And I was just like, I'd been listening to like the demo version of it for like the longest time, and I was just like in love with it. I was like, this is one of my favorite songs that I've ever written.
Hmm.
So I think that's a good call to go with. But yeah, that album's coming out June 30th, along with its like twin album, Shipwreck. So, and that's going to be
Awesome.
on Trepanation Recordings. And you could find it like on the Bandcamp and on the Through Mists. Oh, through band. Jesus Christ, I forget how the Bandcamp link works. Throughmist.bandcamp.com, and yeah, and on streaming platforms everywhere. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Jimmy, I appreciate you coming out tonight and talking with me.
thank you,
And
Brendan. I really appreciate being here.
yeah, it's been a pleasure. Anyone out there still listening, if you'd like to be on an episode, you can send an email to Brandon@darksideofthescene.com and we'll get you scheduled on a future episode. Again, thanks to Jimmy. Thanks to you guys for checking it out. We're going to roll on out now. So catch you on the next one.
Thanks, Brendan. Have a good one.
Hey, you too.